Hello Agenda Woman Tribe and welcome to the first episode of the Agenda Woman Money Dates in partnership with Nedbank. I am so excited for us to be getting onto this transformational journey over the next 9 months. We'll be bringing you episodes where we'll be chatting all things money, where we'll be helping you build good money habits. And I'm really thrilled that we're also starting on the 16th of July, which is Youth Day, because our conversation today will be focused on money and youth, setting up yourself up at a young age. I think for young people who are tuning in today, this is going to be a powerful conversation that's going to help you better understand what it is that you need to be doing with your money today. And for the older youth like myself, it's going to be a reflective journey that's really going to help you look back and think about what you could have done better. But as we get on with the money dates over the next 9 months, you will then look back at this conversation and start to think about all the things that you need to be working on. My name is Nomdeni Mtaki and I am the founder of Agenda Woman. I am joined today by the tribe's favorite, Lesego Scott, and our new tribe members, Zodwa Ncamu, who is a renowned financial specialist, and Amukelani Hlungwani, who is an esteemed behavioral expert. Ladies, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
I'm so excited. You know, money conversations are so crucial, particularly for women. And as I reflect on my own journey with money, I wish there could have been spaces like this where I could listen in, you know, on what maybe more experienced people were doing with their money and what I needed to better understand at the time. Lesego, when you think about your journey and you reflect on your youth, what do you think could have helped you put yourself in a better financial position today if you had interfaced with it at an earlier age?
Sure. So my journey with money and finances generally wasn't, well, it is not linear. I think I constantly have to remind myself that I know more than the level at which I'm behaving and interacting with money. And that conscientization, especially as something that I gradually do, assists a lot on my day-to-day decisions. And I make reference to my day-to-day decisions because I do not believe I can be responsible with millions if I fail at managing, you know, my daily decisions. And that speaks to opting to just eat what I cooked, you know, as opposed to passing by the 80,000 outlets between the office and my place, you know. And I think that really boils down to how badly do I want what I say I want with money, you know, because it's so much easier to set these targets. It's very easy to say, I'm going to spend less on takeouts, I'm going to invest more, but it's another question as to what am I prepared to change in my daily routines that is going to lend me closer to that. So my relationship with money really takes a lot of reflection as I go and realizing that if I do not do anything differently today, I will be in the same position a year from now.
Girl, I have to tell you, during COVID, that's when I realized I also have an issue with takeaways because I saved a lot of money when all those shops were closed.
And that's all of us.
That's so true. Zodwa, when you think about your conversations as a financial expert with people of varying ages, what do you believe is the main reason why financial management should be a conversation we're having with people early on in their age?
Wow, Nomdeni, firstly, I'd like to build context into my response, if you may permit me to be, to go personal. So I'd like to share my own personal story because I believe everything that I do is actually centered around that story. So when I was younger, in my, just early 20s, I had an opportunity to have a Truworths account. I wanted to be, unique, just like every young, black girl coming from the rural area, of course. In doing so, I am now at a position where I'm able to own something that has my name on it. I want to smell nice, I want to be that lady with high-heeled shoes. And girl, the Truworths account did it for me. However, that was the start of my problems because I then maxed out my credit limit on my Truworths account. I'm young. I mean, I don't even think that I will age, believe you me. That was a problem in the sense that the first 8 months, I remember very well, I could really pay the installments, which was around 120 rands. After the 8 months, I don't remember what prompted me to stop paying it, and I just stopped paying. I never felt guilty. Little did I know what that would do to my credit record, because now I'm out of varsity, I'm starting to look for a job, permanent job in the bank. I was shortlisted, interviewed, and I was a successful candidate. Guess what? I received a call, and I am called to, the bank, and they introduced this thing of me being the successful candidate, and I was very happy, and there was a however. We have figured out that you are blacklisted, and we are not allowed, as per process, to employ you permanently. To cut the long story short, luckily for me, I was able to, work my way out of that situation, because I agreed to actually, get myself out of debt by signing an addendum. Where I'm going with this, developing good money habits at an early stage, it creates a foundation, Nomdeni. It actually creates a foundation which can help one to prepare for a solid financial future. So when we speak about good money habits, I would like to refer, because the word habits, there's something very interesting about it, and I would just quote that, when you refer to the Oxford Dictionary, they define habit as a thing that you do. It's a habit, a thing that you do often and almost without thinking, especially something that is very hard to stop doing. So if you are intending to build good money habits, it means it's going to be a good thing, right? Now and in the long run, because it's going to be habitual. However, I also want to say this, be that as it may, we do understand that financial decisions that are made at an earlier age can have long-term consequences. However, if you are intentional by providing the right tools, to the youth, enabling them to make, better money decisions, it will help them to prevent unnecessary debt, and also helping them, to be economically secure. You are then providing them with a platform, to secure a financial future, which is solid, of course. So I guess that is why it's very necessary that you receive that foundation, that money management background, or at a very early age,
I really love, Zodwa, that you speak about habits as I segue to my next question to you, Amu. As a behavioral expert, which is, I think, my dream job in a different life, when you think about, Zodwa contextualized this so beautifully, the idea of habits and how when you build a habit and it becomes a habit because you're doing it without thinking over a long period of time. So at the early stages, as we get our first jobs, right? That's when we first interface with money. I can't wait to see what that will look like for my kids. We're still assessing. As you work in the behavioral space and you think about young people and the challenges that they face when it comes to developing good money habits or even grasping onto them at early ages, what are you seeing as the reasons that's something that's very difficult? I mean, when I think about the things I know now, if someone had told me then, I would have just been like, whatever. So what is it about youth and money habits that we need to better understand as mothers and also as young people who are listening into this conversation?
Thank you so much for that question. So just from a behavioral perspective, as individuals, and not just only the youth, even some of us who are older youth, we fall into the habit of, you just want to buy that takeaway, or you just want that True Words account. And from a behavioral science perspective, we call this present bias, right? So present bias is actually a tendency whereby as individuals, we tend to focus or put more value or weight on things that are for today or the needs of today without actually looking at the needs of tomorrow. So in a trade-off situation, I'd rather, it's just Uber Eats. I'll just Uber my food, and it will come there because I'm hungry right now. So I'll be able to do that. From a True Words account perspective, I just want to look good. I want to wear good. And it has a little bit into social thinking, because we know that as individuals, we are social beings and we are all actually wired wired from a social perspective. So from a building a habits perspective, I like what you said, Lesego. You could actually start by making small changes on a day-to-day basis. So just making sure, even if it's something as simple as, you avoid the route that has the 80,000 outlets, or, you put your Uber Eats on mute as an example. So just little things that you become self-aware of, because then you are able to see these are some of the biases that you're able to fall into from a behavioral perspective.
I was having a conversation with a friend's daughter and her friends. And of course, I'm having conversations with my own kids as well, as they start to make little money here, allowances and all of that. And I realized that it's very different for everyone where their pitfalls lie, right? For someone else, it's takeaways. For someone else, it's buying gifts for people. For someone else, I even hear people saying, I spend on experiences versus things, right? So there's different ways that people fall into bad habits when it comes to money, because I think it's also important to contextualize that the things that we're talking about are not bad.
Yes.
But it depends on how you're interfacing with these experiences, then it starts to become a bad habit. Zodwa, when you think about the work that Nedbank has done around money personalities, how can one's understanding of their own money personality help them better manage their money? Because I guess once you know what your personality is, then you know where the pitfall is going to be for yourself in the future. I remember Kenzie, who is the CMO at Nedbank, mentioning that her weakness is giving gifts. Right, so she tries and avoids it as much as possible, and maybe you can build a plan or open a Netflix account so that you don't go overboard. But as you think about the work that the bank has done around money personalities, how is understanding your money personality going to help you better manage your relationship with money?
So, Namdeni, that is a very good question. So, firstly, I'd like to just point out that everybody has a money personality. Money personality, it is a unique relationship that one has with money. And in saying that, you need to also just understand that your unique relationship with money, it influences your financial decision making. And if that is the case, then it is very important for you to understand your money personality. And take myself, Zotwa, as an example. I do know, like you mentioning Kenzie now, said she's actually a gifter. So I know that I'm a carer. I am a carer because, I am Zotwa because of my, background. I come from the rural areas. I have 5 siblings. There's extended family. I am the one who is more, I would call myself, fortunate enough in the family and in the entire family at large. So for me, it is very important that I, do things for them. It is natural. Not knowing my money personality can create problems for me then, because I feel compelled to do something for them because they cannot do it for themselves. In saying so, if somebody was to ask me, as an example, for back then for to help them with taking a personal loan, because I've interacted with people that have made those mistakes before, they would go and take a personal loan. However, in this instance of me being a carer, I need to know what is my money personality, because number one, I would be very mindful in terms of what is it that I need to do. Because feeling that I am compelled to be helping, extended family and my siblings, it would mean that I'm going to be, falling into a debt trap. Debt trap that I did not even plan for. That was not even in my budget. But understanding your money personality, it actually assists you. It's the first step, in fact, towards a financial healthy life. Because if you understand that, it means you are now very much mindful of your money blind spots. You are also mindful of your emotional blind spots. Remember, I'm mentioning that I'm from, the rural community. I have 5 siblings. I'm the most fortunate one in the family. That emotional blind spot is going to be helping me to, do things without feeling guilty. At the same time, I'm falling into a debt trap. But understanding the money personality of a carer, it will help me to know that now, Zotwa, this is your spending plan. You understand that you have extended, people that relies on your salary. Take out 1,000 rand on a monthly basis, put it aside. First come, first served. Nomdeni. If you didn't become the first come, first served, it means it's gone. I will learn, because there is that emotional blind spot which is attached to me. But now that I know that I'm a carer and what those emotional blind spots and money blind spots are, I am able to navigate that. I will know exactly what I'm getting myself into. I would know that, oops, I'm about to, take credit or take something on credit, as opposed to saying, no, stop. Did I plan for it? No. So is it necessary? No. Then it can wait. I've done that to some of the people. I don't become the most, popular person, but at the end of the day, I'm still okay, and we move on. So it's very important to know your money personality, because you are starting a journey towards being financially healthy. You are now responsible for everything that you've done, because you are taking debt and you know exactly why you have taken out debt and how you can actually take actions in the result that something goes wrong. Other than somebody who just doesn't know their money personality.
I really like that you shared that story, Zoto, because I think it's the story of many young people. I can't even say young women. I think a lot of us enter the workforce with excitement around our ability to change our families' lives, right? And we're always, most of the time, let me say, we overcompensate in areas where there's expectations that if you're making 10,000 rands, it's all gonna come home. People don't think about you paying your rent and you building your own life, and it's a very tough conversation to have with particularly family, which is why I like the fact that we're bringing it up right now as we speak to the youth to better understand where they're positioned. Lesego, you mentioned this yourself when we had you at that Gentlemen's Summit last year, that this is one of the areas where you have had pitfalls. If you're comfortable, would you be able to share a little bit about the story and maybe update us on how that has shifted over the past couple of months?
Look, I think my experience with, I resist the urge to call it black tax, but because that's the term my peers understand, I'm gonna call it that, right? My experience with black tax, and I like what Zoto was saying, by the way, that you affirm and have boundaries in place when it comes to other financial aspects, but when it relates to your family, and people you have a sense of responsibility over, there are completely no boundaries. Like, there would be instances where I pass a store, despite the fact that I see a pair of heels that I like, and I'm like, no, I didn't budget for this, so I'm not gonna get this. And then I get home, my younger brother, for example, or my mom calls and they ask for money, and I send it easily, So it also comes with a sense of feeling like it's a waste of money when I spend it on myself, but it's sort of an investment or something that cleans my conscience when I send it home. And I think one of the things I've had to really learn is that there's the lift as you rise predicament, and there's understanding that I can only do so much. And what that means is that I can build and I can sort of, to the best of my ability, provide for my family, but I can also still anticipate that there's a future for myself, So beyond all of these commitments, what am I doing to make sure that, God forbid, if for argument's sake, tomorrow I'm unemployed, do I have now a building that's half finished, a family that is dependent on me, and an empty savings account, So I think all of those considerations, and largely clouded by the fact that as a varsity student, you dream about the days when you'll get your salary,
Absolutely.
So it comes in, and now you have to silence all of the pressures you experience as a young person, the pressure to just go out, and splurge, because the guilt that comes with that after that, and the series of financial responsibilities that you are going to have to come back to. And I'd be lying if I was to say I've navigated a sort of a thread or a solution across, but I also think, I have learned more about money between when I first had a conversation with the tribe and now, and I'm trying to make sure that that education translates into my decisions. You know, the building is still ongoing, you know, the financial sense of responsibility over the family is still ongoing, and it grows, unfortunately. You know, you don't get to a point where you're like, okay, I've done enough. You know, we can discuss the amount of times I'm like, please don't ask for money beyond what I've already sent, because I don't have it, and they'll call and ask for money and I'll send it. You know, so there are also those difficulties with navigating, you know, trying to come out of a certain financial background, but also trying to make sure you do not leave anyone behind, and trying to make sure that you do not pull yourself back from advancing at a pace that you'd like to. So there are those dynamics.
I have to say, you know, one of the things I always share with my kids particularly, which has really changed my perspective when it comes to not only money, but generally growth, is that everything is a process.
Absolutely.
Everything is a process. Often because of, you know, just how we behave and our need for instant gratification and all of that. We want to do things now, and we want to change things now, and we want to change people's lives now. I promise you're not going to change your mom's life now, right? No matter how tough their situation is, no matter how tough your brother's situation is, it's not going to change from you keeping, like, pouring in that money into that bucket over and over again. I've resorted for myself that I need to build a plan. A solid plan for how to get people into a better situation. And I think one of the things that is so important, particularly in our culture, is the understanding that you need to earn money.
True.
Money is earned. It's not asked for. It's not borrowed from your friends. Money is earned. And I think that's a conversation we need to have in one of the money dates. The idea of everyone understanding as a fundamental principle that money is earned. Amu, in this concept of, you know, all of us navigating different challenges, particularly, you know, maybe as we think about our own money personalities, how do you believe self-awareness is crucial and can shift our relationship with our money? And if you could give us a practical example of, you know, where awareness moves a person from one behavior to another behavior, that would be really helpful.
So thank you for that. So from an self-awareness is very crucial, right? For you to be able to understand yourself, then you are able to make those small decisions on a day-to-day basis to be able to actually change you know, your outlook on money. So I'll give a personal example from my perspective. One of the things that I wanted to do was to actually write down your financial goals. So we are all aware with journaling. Everybody is aware with journaling. But the way in which you can hack the behavioral science principle from this is that we know from behavioral sciences and from research that individuals who make a commitment, right, they usually stick to that. We have a principle called commitment consistency, whereby if you've made a small commitment, then you are more likely to actually stick out that commitment, because you don't want to have behaviors that are not aligned to any commitments that you've made in the past. So actually just writing down your journaling, your financial goals, right? But not only that, you also need to be able to understand what motivates me as an individual. You know that people are motivated in two ways. You're either intrinsically motivated. So from a financial perspective, if your goal is, you know what, I want to pay off my Truworths account, what would motivate you to get to that place? Is it actually the act of paying off the Truworths account? Because then we know, then you understand that, okay, fine, then I'm intrinsically motivated. Or are you extrinsically motivated, meaning that you are motivated by something that is outside of that task? So as an example, maybe you say, I've paid off my Truworths account, so therefore I want to pay it off in 3 months, and after that I'm going to get myself a cold cash. You know, that is extrinsic motivation. So just to wrap up on that is that as you journal down your money goals or your financial goals as well, just write as well what are the things that are going to motivate you, and make those commitments to yourself, make those promises to yourself. That is one of the things that I've seen that helped me as well from a personal perspective.
I really love the idea of journaling your money goals. I think there's so many things around just behavioral science that people take for granted because we speak about them so much. Just the idea of journaling, I like the fact that for you as someone who's an expert expert. You're bringing up those practices that often when we bump into them on Agenda Woman websites or on social media, we're just like, not another journaling practice. But when it does come from an expert, I hope it is more anchored for the people listening, and they better understand how psychologically that affects you. Zodwa, when you think about young people, right, and some of the challenges that they face when it comes to creating effective money or good money habits, what are some of the effective strategies that you've seen? I mean, you've been doing this work for a very long time. What particularly have you seen work in young people? Because I think the idea of never growing old is such a real thing. I struggle to motivate young people when it comes to making sure that they have good money habits. But through your work, what effective strategies have you seen work when it comes to conversations with young people?
So I'm looking at Lesego and smiling because she actually captured something very nicely to say, build boundaries. Because by doing so, I mean, you are able to actually work out, a very solid financial future for yourself. But from over the years, so those things are, firstly, as a young person, you need to start by understanding who you really are.
Yeah.
Understand your money personality. We are saying understand how you relate with money. When you have it in your hands, what happens to you? What do you do? You need to know that. Also take action, Nomdeni. Take action because, I mean, we do know that when you take action, you would probably start by arming yourself, with the financial, tools that will, help you to make sure that you work your way towards, financial health. And in doing so, everything else, I mean, if you are doing so, if you're arming yourself with the right financial tools, as an example, towards your journey of financial health, you are actually literally saying that you want to be somebody that is better than yesterday. That is what you are actually literally saying to yourself. And also, Namden, we have platforms like this. Invest in yourself. Educate yourself. I mean, financial education is available widely. It's in abundance in the on the internet, in platforms like this, Agenda Woman, and also read, books that are related to money management. I want to also say, prioritize what you already know. There is nothing that is defeating than somebody who already know what needs to be done. You know the effective money strategies, but you are literally doing nothing about it. If all of the above is taken care of, I promise you, you will be a better person than somebody who's just sitting and doing nothing at all. So that is what I would like to share. You have to start doing something about what you already know. Prioritize it. And maybe to add, because some of our delegates, as we continue to deliver, the consumer education, it would be centered around starting to think outside of what you do. Usually, I mean, normally, develop a new skill. We call it side hustling. Develop a new skill, and you are doing something different about yourself there. And you're creating a buffer in terms of having some additional cash. What is always a problem is having an idea as a young person. Be very careful not to overshare your ideas because you'll be oversharing to the wrong people. They will take your ideas and monetize them, and you will be left with nothing. And we always hear often about it. But that was my idea, and they stole it. No, they didn't steal it. You overshared and did nothing.
They took action.
Exactly. So prioritize doing something about something that you already know. Don't just sit back and think that it's going to solve itself. I mean, we always hear that there are no new ideas under the sun. And I really love the idea of, I love the way that you contextualize the sharing of ideas and action. Because I think a lot of times, even when people share ideas, of course, when you're moving and you're sharing ideas because you're looking for information, you're taking action, right? This flow in the energy of the idea. But if you're sharing ideas for the sake of sharing ideas and someone else takes action, well, definitely.
Said for you. I want you to help me with something. There's a lot of information we get around money and what we can do, and we're sharing a lot today.
Yeah.
And I hope everyone who's listening is taking notes, because there's quite a bit that everyone can go back to and start to think through strategically around how they move forward. What should we be conscious of? What are those things that will come at us when we're ready to take action? And it's just like, okay, I know I need to be journaling. I need to be doing this, and I need to be, not sharing my ideas too much unless I'm looking for information that moves me forward. What are the things that we need to be conscious of that have a lot to do with our psychology that affect us getting to a point where we are financially healthy? Because we fall off at some points, and there's a lot that happens in between. What is it that we need to be thinking of, we need to be careful of, that will affect us by virtue of us just being human beings?
Yeah, that is very interesting. I think from just as a human being, right? So what you already mentioned is the intention action gap. So when you have great intentions.
I need to hear that again. I need to hear that again. It's the intention action gap.
Yeah, so the intention action gap is actually when you have great intentions, however your intentions don't align with your behaviors, right? And the reason why this happens is what we've already discussed in terms of present bias. So basically, so just to give you a very simple example, and a lot of people will be like, oh yeah, whatever. So if you want to save, right? As an example, you say, you know what, I'm going to start saving. I want to save every month. You have great intentions. You want to save. However, your actions are not following suit. Okay. So one of the things that you can do is automate your savings. We've heard of the saying, "Oh, pay yourself first." Automate it. Put in place a recurring payment. Put in place a stop order, as some other individuals know it. And in that way, then you won't fall into that intention action gap, because then at least your intentions are aligning to your behavior. And the other thing that we might fall into is what we actually call the loss aversion. So from a psychological perspective, we know that individuals feel losses twice as much than gains, right? So what this means is when you lose something, it is psychologically twice as painful than gaining something of the same amount.
Yeah.
And I'll give an example. Sure. So, and these are great marketing tactics. So you'll see there's a sale there that says, oh, don't miss out on the 50%.
I think I've heard about this.
Right? So, and you will go in and buy it because you don't want to lose out on that sale.
Yeah.
Right? So that is loss aversion. And some other times I know that, when you want to get into good habits, sort of as like saving, you might feel as though, you know what, it feels like I'm losing out already. I'm not spending my money. But rather than reframe that to say, you know what, I'm paying myself first, or to reframe and say, I'm putting it as part of my spending plan already. So to say that me saving is part of my spending plan. It becomes another spending item on my budget. So those are the things that we need to be conscious of or to be aware of. So these are some of the biases that we actually need to be aware of.
I love that. Intention, action, gap. And I don't think it exists in money alone. I think there's a lot of things that people are just like, I want to do that, I want to be that, and then they just sit at home and absolutely do nothing.
So even in something as simple as, I want to start eating healthy. Okay, so you might have your goal to say, I want to start eating healthy, I want to start going to the gym, and then you like, oh, it's fine, I'll do it, I'll start Monday. And then Monday comes, you're like, oh, I'll start next Monday. Oh, I'll start on the 1st, right? So basically, it goes back to that thing of actually saying that the needs of today are like greater than the needs of tomorrow, because today I'm like, oh, I'm too tired to go out for that run. Maybe tomorrow I'll be fine. But what you don't realize is that the person you are today is also the person that will show up tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you need to catch yourself and be able to make sure that you hold yourself accountable as well. And there are things in place that you can do within your life to be able to do that. So for eating healthy, there's a whole craze about meal prepping.
Yeah.
And the reason why people are doing that is so that you don't fall into the intention action
Absolutely.
gap. There might be other things in your environment that you'll need. Maybe let's say, for example, you don't take into consideration that you will finish work late. So therefore you'll start meal prepping and make sure that at least you have food for the week. So then it makes it easier for you to follow through with your intentions. Yeah.
Listen, I saw a light bulb go off there. When she spoke about that intention action gap, I feel like someone should write a book about all the ways that we don't show up for ourselves when it comes to our intention and how we actually move. Is there a way that you have seen this affect you when it comes to your relationship with your money? And are there some areas maybe in the past when you were younger where you feel like, actually looking back, I used to have an intention action gap when it came to that, but now I've kind of closed that, but now there's a new one, because this is a journey, right?
Look, as she was talking about it, I recently listened to Dr. K's podcast about discipline, right? And she was speaking about how we just fall into the trap of not holding ourselves accountable. And because we are achieving at a level that is impressive to society, we actually do not see the consequences of our ill discipline, And I think my relationship with money operates more from a place of fear, So I think the reason I would fear investments and just prefer my money sitting in my bank where I can constantly check the balance is because it's more than just a financial thing, it's a mental thing, When you're trying to outgrow habits that I mentioned at Agenda Woman, that it's habits that I've seen play out in generations before me.
Yeah.
So when you try to outgrow those things, you do not realize how much of fear plays into that motivation, how much of fear plays into the thing of, if I do not do it this way, my kids are going to have to build me a house, and then they will be delayed in terms of building their own. And actually, so it's all of that fear that sort of informs trying to bridge the gap, So in terms of finances, I'd be lying if I was to say there was much of a gap. It exists in terms of investments, but not in terms of savings. I actually feel like sometimes I just go on my bank apps, but that was before we spoke to Dr. Frank. Who was saying there's no benefit in your money sitting there. It's
and doing nothing.
And it'll be 20K next month. That's the way it is now, So I think all of those conversations, and you were talking about the importance of self-educating. Because I think one of the reasons I cannot possibly hold myself to a lower standard as to how I should be behaving financially is because I have access to so many resources, that automatically set the bar very high as to what I should be achieving, how I should be achieving it, and how badly I want it, And when it comes to the action, intention action gap, I've seen it in quite a lot of areas in my life, and I'm bridging it in terms of gym. So I'd convince myself that I'm gonna gym when I'm not tired, And if I get to bed before 10 p.m., I will make it to 5 a.m., a bit refreshed, then I can go to gym. And now I've decided that for me to go to bed at 10 p.m., I need to have been up at 5 a.m. The day before. So with or without. So I actually tell myself that if I do not go to gym the next morning at 5, I'm condoning my own ill discipline of not having gone to bed at the time I should have. So I think having those conversations where I sort of just constantly remind myself that the world thinks I'm an overachiever because they don't know what I'm capable of. And I do, So because I do, I should not let the applause get louder than the standards to which I should be holding myself.
I love that. I absolutely love that. You brought up something that I think is a common narrative also when it comes to money and women, and that is fear. And yours particularly is placed in the investment space. But there's another area where women are very fearful when it comes to money, and that's credit. And I am one of them. I used to be. I remember the team, the Nedbank team particularly coming to the Agenda Women's Summit in 2022. And one of the things that Ubuli actually highlighted was, Nomneni, there needs to be a conversation around credit being healthy. And I remember hearing that and thinking, In what world is credit healthy? You know, even when, as we think about your opening story, Zodwa, it lands us at that place where we feel like avoid credit at all costs. But that's not true. What I've learned, particularly as a founder now, is how I can use credit to better plan for the money, the liquidity that I actually have, particularly in my business. And it's been an exciting journey to understand that. But I think the gap when it comes to the fear and the action there is in knowledge. And I think the more I got knowledge around how credit can be healthy, I then started to explore how I also need to get myself in a state where I can interface with credit. Because that's another thing we're worried about, right? The minute you go for credit, it exposes how unready you are to actually take on credit. But in actual fact, I want you to talk a little bit around how young people need to understand credit. I don't know the answer to this. It's probably one of those few questions I ask, and I'm just like, I have no idea what you're going to say. But I know that for myself now, I understand how to interface with credit. But what happens with young people coming into the workforce and everything that is shoved down their throats around credit cards and all of that, which I know not all of it is good. So how do they interface with credit?
So, Namdani, very interesting one, because number one, it is credit, of course. It is not your money. You are kind of taking something with a promise that you're going to repay. Right? So you need to firstly start by asking yourself, why do I need credit? Because not understanding the why is a problem on its own. Understanding how credit works, if you do not, it is another problem on its own. We often hear the term instant gratification. Women, we do this quite often. And as we sit and have our coffee, you know, and meetups and all of that, you hear, oh wow, I was passing this shop. Oh, bebene sale. Oh, and then I bought this dress. Guess what? There are women whose closets still have 3, 4, 5 clothes.
They have not one.
With tags. Not one. What is that? Because instant gratification, it actually can lead into impulse shopping. There is a problem. So as a young person, you need to understand all of those things because it actually is building up into something that you were never planning for. And also having too many credit accounts. I mean, I just had that one account at Truworths. Believe you me, luckily for me, I was able to, you know, work in the bank. So I got taught. And it was even a bonus having to join this team because I have, you know, shifted my financial journey in a way that is more favorable than it would have been. So it's very important not to take too many credit accounts. Do you need them? That is why at the beginning I mentioned that it is very important understanding the why. Do I need credit? Very important for the youth to understand that when you take credit, hey, it's like a pinky promise.
Yes.
I am committing into a long-term relationship. It's a long-term relationship because there is this contractual agreement between me and the credit provider in that for you to trust me and for other credit providers to trust me in the future, I must honor the promise, pinky promise of having to repay. When you do not repay, it becomes a problem. There are ways though of avoiding it. Before you decide on taking credit, you just take a pause. Do I need credit? If not, don't take it. Number 2, you do know that you've taken somebody's money. There is a promise for you to pay. Coca is quelling. It is not going to disappear just
Keep
like
your pinky promise.
Keep the pinky promise. Because Uzodwa, the Truworths account, I never felt guilty at that time. The consequences thereafter were, you know, kind of bad. If you honor those, it means you are able, you know, to have that healthy relationship with your credit providers, with your own money personality, because the credit profile defines your own money personality. And I don't want to stress this. Service your debt. Make sure that when you are owing somebody, you do not allocate money in your budget at the end. You need to put it as an expense right at the start, because you know that it is a monthly debt commitment that you need to service. So from me, as a young person, I mean, you need to make sure that you navigate all of that and you will be fine. It must be a habit, because we did say we're building good money habits. Once you start building those good money habits, it is habitual. You will be doing that even in your, in your 40s, in your 50s, and you would not have people calling you and you are ignoring even passing the Truettes and the Woolworths because you think they will see you, that you are in arrears.
That's another form of anxiety on its own. I had a conversation with someone around money anxiety and financial stress and anxiety. But even as I listen to you speak, I'm thinking of Maya Angelou's quotes. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. And I feel what we don't often consider when we go into that pinky promise is that you are exposing who you are to that person and the partner that you are having that conversation with, because you're essentially saying, I'm a person that doesn't do things on time. I'm a person that doesn't honor my agreement. I'm a person that doesn't care about what you have done to get me into a particular position that I potentially want to be in. But Amo, as we speak about credit, I think about, something else that Zodwa said, that question of, do I need the credit?
Yeah.
Right? And often I think, when I think about my own personal experience, my answer always came from fear.
Yeah.
Right? It was rooted in the fear of breaking that pinky promise.
Yeah.
But what I've seen as I've matured and understood money more, I understand what kind of pinky promise I can get into, right? Yeah. Because there's different kinds of promises you can get into. There's different kind of loans and arrangements that you can get into when you get credit. When you look at the spectrum of young people and the decisions that they need to make when they expose themselves to credit, what are some of the key things that they need to consider before they make those decisions? And I'm going to reflect again and say, fundamentally for me, it has been understanding myself that has helped me understand what kind of credit relationship or engagement I can get into. So what is it that we can share with young people who are curious about maybe exposing themselves to credit instruments, the key things that they need to understand and ask themselves when they are making that decision?
So actually the way in which we could alleviate that fear is what we call creating some sort of cognitive ease, right? So this is actually being able to process and understand information. And the way that you can do that is ask yourself, okay, what type of credit do I need? What do you want to do with that credit? Okay. If you need to buy a car, how much money do you have already saved up? Okay, how much will the installment be for the car, for paying back? How much is it going to cost you for petrol? How much is it also going to cost you, like for insurance, as an example? But from a behavioral perspective, you need to be able to ask ask whoever you're getting into credit with, ask them for the terms and conditions. I mean, when you sign that credit agreement, there's lots of terms and conditions. Nobody reads that. But what you could do for yourself is to ask, do some scenarios and say, okay, if I were, for example, unable to pay this, then what happens?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually asking.
Yes.
Asking the bank.
Ask the bank. So if I was unable to pay, what happens? As an example, I see that there you've written interest rate, it's market linked. What does that mean? As an example, we don't even know what that means. And in terms of credit, I mean, we suffer from choice overload. There's lots of choices. There's lots for you to choose from. But you need to be actually, you need to be self-aware and to actually check what type of credit is it that I need? How am I going to use this credit? And also asking the terms and conditions. Like, a lot of people don't know that a lot of credit cards within the financial services industry, there's a rule to say that within a couple of days you can pay it interest-free.
Sure.
Even your Truewords account, I mean, you can choose the option to say, I want to pay it within 6 months.
Yes.
And it's interest-free. Then what does that mean? So just being able to be self-aware, and actually, you can't just take credit for the sake of, just buying that dress and all of that. And I think a lot of young people and also some older people, we fall into using credit for impulse buying, for impulse purchases. So what I've implemented for myself is to actually have a rule in place. Have a 24-hour rule in place.
Yes.
When you want
I like
to buy
that.
something
Yes.
that you did not spend, that is not in your spending plan, it's not in your budget, have a 24-hour rule to say, yes, I see the dress, it is on sale. Okay, let me go actually away for 24 hours. Let me think about it.
Yeah.
Let me come back. Even
Yeah.
if the sale is gone, it wasn't in my budget anyway.
Feel judged.
You know? Are you feeling judged? No. This is me speaking to my younger
No.
self as well. Because you buy those things on credit because you don't have the cash right there. You're like, oh yeah, it's fine. And one of the other things that we fall into, especially within the credit card space, is you're chasing that reward. You know, you're chasing the points, you're chasing everything else, but that does not give you the right to sort of like let yourself lose and not hold yourself accountable to be able to buy things on impulse. So have the 24-hour rule in place.
Yeah.
That is just one practical tip. Yeah.
I have to say, I had a TFG account and I had a good experience, I must just say. And I think it's very important to point out that all these things that we speak about, they become good or bad based on your habits and how you interface with them. And one of the things I did know is that in 6 months' time, I could pay I finished most of my house using the TFG account with at home. And I knew that in 6 months, I could plan. If a couch is 20,000 rands, I can pay it off in 6 months and then it's interest free. But one of the things that we also struggle with, I think particularly as young people, or they, I'm no longer young. One of the things that young people struggle with is the fear of asking those questions. You know, and also communicating. That's another thing that I learned. Actually communicating with your lender and saying, I've lost my job. You know, this is the situation that I'm in. What are my options? Or I'm worried about this particular thing next month. Like, what are my options? This is how, when you think about your relationship with credit, what kind of journey have you had in just interfacing with credit, whether bad or good credit?
Look, I've had bad experiences. So I studied in Cape Town, and when I was supposed to move here, I had identified a place. I almost mentioned where I stay. So I identified the place, right? And I went, viewed the place, they shortlisted me, and then they called me, I think like a day, you know, I had just left the province to go to Limpopo. So I had arrived from Western Cape. I was in Gauteng because I needed to sort out my accommodation before I go home for December. Then they phoned me and they're like, Rage says you owe them. Like, Rage, you know? I contact Rage, it's literally 134 rands, guys, you know? And I call the landlord, I'm like, but I'm gonna pay them. They're like, no, it's not just about the transaction. Rage must confirm that you have paid them, you know? And I'm there trying to contact Rage to say, but tell these people I've paid you guys, you know? And I happened to have a conversation with one of the owners of the property. It's quite a big property company, especially around Sandton. And what he was explaining is that these are some of the moments where a lot of young people learn their relationship with money, you know? It's like they barely know about that expense. They barely know about that account. In fact, you find I had opened it when I was in grade 12.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was the last time I had used it. That was literally why I did not even know I owed Rage that amount, you know? And what he was explaining is that sometimes the companies are not even as lenient to clear you as quickly as Rage was with me.
Absolutely.
And the consequences become resounding, you know? And I think it was at that point where I was like, I'm not doing this again. You know? Until I had to get a car sometime in 2022. Then that's when I got into credit again. But even then, I needed to, you know, I was just in such a panic mode that I wanted to throw in as much deposit as I needed to. And I was actually advised against it to say, you do know your deposit does nothing to your, you know, well, not nothing, but it makes very little of a difference, you know, not as much as I would anticipate that it does. And it's on such things where I cannot avoid credit that I make sure. I think we negotiated my car purchase for like 2-3 months. Started in September.
I love
and
that.
I collected my car in November. Despite the fact that I was taking Uber, we knock off very late at work, you know? So I'd use Uber and I'll just bear the difficulties because I did not want that level of inconvenience to pressure me into you know, sealing a deal that I do not necessarily understand the implications. So I would like to believe that when it comes to credit that I know I cannot avoid, I do pose the probing questions as to what happens if this is, you know, the different ramifications of how do we arrange this? What do I do when this happens? And how do I avoid certain things from happening?
Yeah. I think we need an entire episode on credit.
Yeah.
I think we need an entire episode of credit. I've really seen how fear becomes the main reason behind people either accessing or not accessing credit, and even keeping the pinky promise. Like, we have such a horrible relationship with banks, then we're like, I don't care to keep the pinky. As long as they give me the money, I'm gone. But in actual fact, it then affects you in the future. As we get to towards the end of this conversation, I just want to ask each of you individually, when you think about your earlier years and your relationship with money, I don't want to say what would you not have done. I want to know what would you have done differently. You know, what is it that where would you have saved? How would you have saved? Would you have accessed credit? Would you have not accessed credit? Would you have kept a journal? Would you have not kept a journal? We've spoken really about a lot today, and I want to just give everyone a chance to share a little bit about what they believe they could do if they went back and they were young again. And can I start? Yes. I would have definitely saved more and saved better. When I think about the effect of time on money, that's another conversation. The effect of time on money, and the fact that whatever I start saving now, I don't benefit as much as someone who's starting at 20 by virtue of the fact that they have 20 more years than me. Just understanding that rule of the effect of time on money and how it grows, that is, I think, what I would have spent my time better understanding and finding the right instruments to place my money where it can sit for longer.
Sure. So just reflecting now, you know, one of the things that I wish I shouldn't have done was, as you move a job, you know, you resign, just take that package. Ooh. You know, you just take that money. And like right now, I don't even remember what I did with it. So true as well, just would have just moved with my pension to a new employment, to a new employer. So I would have done that. I would have started journaling a whole lot earlier. And also just making sure that, you know, those money promises that I make for myself, they're in my vision board as well. So I would have actually started that at a much earlier age.
I'm obsessed with vision boards.
Wow, so Nomdeni, for me, my younger self, picture this, I'm even closing my eyes, because I wouldn't have made those unrealistic goals. In the sense that when I was at varsity, because you get a culture shock. There were people that were better than me, some average than me, and I wanted to be like the ones that were better than me. But I didn't even know anything about where they get the money from and whatsoever. So I started visualizing myself looking like them. When I got that account at Truett's, I maxed it out because I thought I needed to, you know. It was an unrealistic goal. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to service that debt. Like Amo, I resigned in my first 8 years of permanent employment. I resigned. I had nothing, absolutely nothing about financial literacy. The only thing that was in my head, because I'm a carer, back then I didn't know, now I know. My family was waiting for that money. We used it. I remember very well. And I was on balloon payment. I remember paying the 40-something thousand towards that car. And the rest, the grocer, it was everything that I always wanted. You know, that meat that is rolled. Everything that was just nice. That was me. So my younger self, I would make sure that I invest wisely. While I want to pay myself first as well, I would have at least taken a portion out of that, you know, and used it. And a portion of that, invested it wisely, because they were financial planners then. But I don't think they also played a role in my life, because they were there. And they didn't give me, you know, the right knowledge about, hey, Zodwa. They knew I was resigning. They didn't tell me. So I would go back and do all the things. We were having a conversation area. All the things that I didn't do, I would actually turn things around. I'm now more knowledgeable because I read more on the internet. I follow platforms. I buy books. I listen to podcasts. And I learn from the mistakes. Even now, I still make mistakes. However, so that I I don't repeat those mistakes. I learn more, I read more, and I understand, what type of an investor I am, because you need to be a certain type of an investor for you to invest in a particular asset. So that is a younger version of me. Yeah,
I love it.
Thank you.
Sure. I think the biggest thing for me, right, and especially, as a 25-year-old, when you have these kind of conversations and you sort of try and conscientize your peers, sometimes you're told you're being too hard on yourself.
Yeah. You still have time, right?
You've got time.
You've got time.
And if there's one thing you do not have, especially in relation to finances, it's time. I can promise you, I read an article, I think it's published on the Nedbank website. It has quite a number of helpful articles as to how you can invest, what are the 9 options that you've got, and what are the benefits of investing and saving and developing a healthy relationship with money when you're still single, when you're not a parent, and because those are things we defer to a later stage in our lives. And you find that by the time you want to start doing it, you're either a parent or you have a lifelong partner, and you now need to sort of marry that commitment, and you also need to make sure that the person is aligned in terms of their principles with money. So developing those habits would be, I think I'd be more intentional, and really just take away from the idea that I am too young, because there are certain mistakes I do, and I'm like, no, but you're just 25 years old. But equally, I'm 25 years old with access to all of these tools and resources. So that sort of accountability-wise, it launches me far ahead an average 25-year-old, and I need to be realistic with myself about what am I doing with all of this information, What am I doing with the fact that I know it is literally at my fingertips to understand what are the various investment options that Nedbank offers, for an example. You do not need to sign into anything. You don't even need to call anyone. It has a drop down of all of those options, and that information, as well as, because it also has links that you can press and it expands on that particular conversation if a particular terminology in finance is unclear. So knowing that information is available, and knowing that if I do not do anything now, I am going to land into the same habits I wish my parents and my grandparents actually defeated. And that means I am handing over the baton to my children in the same condition I received it. What then am I doing at this point, to make sure that the manner in which I say, here's the baton, places no obligation on them to do anything for me. If there's one thing, there's a book called It Ends With Us. And I think the excerpt that drew me to the book, it says, my grandmother went through it, my mother went through it, and I went through it. And the author says, I'll be damned if I let my kids go through it, And those are one of the things the conversations that I constantly have with myself around money, to say, if at the very least, I can make sure that at the point I bring a child here, I have a house of my own, that I have built, I have a car that I love. So when they work towards their dreams, they have no burden to sort of make up for anything that I would not have been able to do. And it expands just beyond the province of finances. It goes far beyond that. And in terms of any other areas that I may hold dreams in respect to in my life,
I think that's the perfect way to end this conversation. It ends with us.
Yeah.
I really love that philosophy of being intentional around what do you want to see happening with the next generation. And if you're not going to have kids, because that's okay, what happens with you as you retire? That's another topic altogether. What happens with you as you retire? Are you in a position where you can take care of yourself, where you don't become a burden to someone who is younger and trying to develop their own financial habits and money habits? I am really grateful to have had the opportunity to engage with all of you ladies. More than anything, to have an expert or financial expert who is exposed to these stories all the time and is helping people navigate some of these challenges, and even just understanding psychologically what it is that they're confronted with. And Amu, all those terms that have to do with behavior, I think more than anything, for the people who have the information, I am really excited to consistently have a behavioral expert on the couch, because once you have the information, I think one of the things you need to understand is how are you going to be an impediment to yourself,
Sure.
right? Because there's so much that we're exposed to, but I find that a lot of times what the challenge is not knowing how, as a personality, I might then be the problem as I navigate the information. And listen, for always telling your story so authentically and honestly. Thank you for being the voice of the tribe today. So every single month when we have the money dates, we will have the same setup. It will be a panel of a behavioral expert, a financial expert, as well as someone who will be representing the tribe. And it could be you. So stay tuned to get more information around what happens after these conversations, where you can go to get more information, and who you can be in touch with once you're ready to take action. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Namdeni.
you.